Alright, Shalom Israel. First start, I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Hashem Yahushai, Kadash, doubling us to the elders and apostles in Israel who rule and teach all, to the Akims on the highways and byways and those pushing videos in truth and sincerity, to the brothers and sisters in the truth. Now, what I wanted to touch on quickly is the understanding of who is actually being held accountable for sin. Because what you find out with religion, they play on certain words, or certain words have them confounded when you hear words like all or whosoever. And we have to realize that it's not always inclusive to everyone. It could be of a particular group. So this is like this is Romans 3:22. It says, even the righteousness of the Most High, which is by faith of Yahushua Mashiach, unto all, that word all, and upon all them that believe, for there is no difference. Verse 23 says, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of the Most High. And it's scriptures like these that has those in the church stuck and confused. The term all is not always inclusive to everyone. It could be all of a particular group. And this is what we have to understand when we're reading the scriptures and we hear words like all and whosoever. Now, quickly, let's look at the meaning all. It says, used to refer to the whole quantity, or extent of a particular group or thing. So as I was saying, all isn't always inclusive to everyone or everything. It could be all of a particular group. And that's what the scriptures is teaching when we hear all or whosoever. It's dealing with a particular group. So it says, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of the Most High. So what is sin? This is 1 John. First John 3. It says all have sinned. But to show that it's not dealing with everyone, go through a few scriptures. 1 John 3:4, it says, whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law, for sin is the transgression of the law. So when it says all have sinned, sin is the breaking of the law. So who is being held accountable for keeping the law? Amos chapter 3. And I put a few scriptures together, but really and truly I could have added some more. So it's lucky if it's taken a little bit more time. This is Amos chapter 3:1. It says, hear this word that the Lord has spoken against you, O children of Israel, against the whole family which I brought up out of the land of Egypt, saying, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. Therefore I will punish you for all your iniquities. So going back to Romans 3:23, when it says, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God, the glory of the Most High. The all that have sinned is dealing with the Israelites. And Paul is teaching this. We have to remember that the New Testament is being taught out of the Old. This is what religion tends to neglect in their doctrine, is that nothing in the New Testament is contradicting what's in the Old. Now, you need to know what's written in the Old so you can have a better understanding of what's in the New. Otherwise, you will do what religion does, and that's just roll with scriptures and apply it to everybody when it's not inclusive. So all have sinned. This is Daniel 9:11. Yea, all Israel have transgressed thy law. So it makes sense. If sin is a transgression of the law, and the Most High said in Amos, he's going to hold the Israelites accountable for sin, then it only makes sense that the all that's being referred to that have sinned and falling short of the glory of the Most High is the Israelites. Daniel 9:11. Yea, all Israel have transgressed thy law, even by departing, that they might not obey thy voice. Therefore the curse is poured upon us, and the oath that is written in the law of Moses, the servant of the Most High, because we have sinned against him. And this is who's being held accountable for sin, the Israelites. And this is what we try and get our Christian brothers and sisters to understand, but for some reason, they seem to get stuck on the word all and whosoever as if it's always inclusive to everybody. Well, we know that these things can be to a particular group, as we saw in the definition that I brought out. Now this is Romans 5:12. It says, wherefore as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin, and so death passed upon all men, for all have sinned. Now it says death have passed upon all men, so we know that we all die. This is another verse that could be used or is used at times to say, look, everyone's accountable for sin because we all die. But we have to understand that when Adam was created, yeah, and the state that he was in, the state that he had originally, Adam wouldn't have died if he hadn't sinned, because it is sin that brings death into the world, into our world. Yeah, this is second Esdras. This is why when the new covenant comes in, I'm going to bring this up. Yeah, and we get them new bodies, we won't be sinning, therefore we won't die. This is Hebrews chapter 8. And remember, the scripture says, keep my commandments and live, in Proverbs 7:2. And this is what was happening when Adam was first created. He was keeping the law. This is Hebrews 8. Now jump down a bit at 10. It says, Hebrews 8:10, for this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days. Yeah. So even the new covenant is not with everyone, save the Lord. I will put my laws into their mind and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a power, and they shall be to me a people. And they shall not teach every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, know the Lord, for all shall know me, from the least to the greatest. And why won't we be teaching anyone? Because those laws which we at times struggle to keep today, they will be in us. They will be second nature. Yeah. So we won't be sinning, therefore we won't die. And that goes back to what I was reading in Romans 5:12, where it says, wherefore as by one man sin entered into the world, and that man was Adam, and death by sin, because it's because of sin why we die. First Corinthians 15. Yeah, if we weren't sinning, we wouldn't be dying. And that's the state the Most High is going to put us back to in that day. This is 1 Corinthians 15 and 56. It says, the sting of death is sin. Yeah. And the strength of sin is the law. So once you're keeping the law, it keeps you out. It stops you from sinning. Like, if you're keeping the law, you're not sinning. Let me put it that way. That's a better way to put it. Therefore, if you're not sinning, death will not pass upon you. But this is why we die today, because we still end up sinning at times, and we know the wages of sin is death. Now it says, wherefore as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin, so death passed upon all men. Now they'll read this and say all men, because we know that we all die today. But that wasn't the case originally for Adam. Yeah. This is 2 Esdras 3:4. O Lord, who bearest rule, thou spakest at the beginning, when thou didst plant the earth, and that thyself alone, and commandest the people, and gavest a body unto Adam without soul, which was the workmanship of thine hands, and didst breathe into him the breath of life, and he was made living before thee. So the breath of life that was breathed into Adam was the law. Yeah. It says he became living. I quote this earlier on. Proverbs 7. Yeah. Proverbs 7:1. My son, keep my words and lay up my commandments with thee. Keep my commandments and live, and my law as the apple of thine eye. So this was what was breathed into Adam. Yeah, Adam was given the law, statutes, and commandments. It says, and he was made living before thee, and thou leddest him into paradise, which thy right hand had planted, before ever the earth came forward. And unto him thou gavest commandment to love thy way, yeah, which he transgressed. So let's see what happened when Adam broke these commandments. It says, and immediately thou appointest death in him and in his generations, of whom came nations, tribes, and kindreds out of number. So if Adam hadn't sinned, the generation that came from him, the sons of God down to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the tribes, we wouldn't be dying. But this is why we die now. So that explains where it says, and so death passed upon all men. The all that's been referred to is Adam and his generations. These other nations, when we get into the kingdom, they will not have the law in them. They will not be under the new covenant. This is why in Micah 4, because remember, in the new covenant, it says he's going to put the laws in us, and we're not going to be teaching every man his brother, saying, know the Lord, for all shall know me. Now this is Micah chapter 4 and 2. It says, and I start 1, but in the last days it shall come to pass that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established in the top of the mountains. So the government that Yahushua is coming to establish is going to be over all these other governments, and it shall be exalted above the hills, and people shall flow unto it. And many nations shall come and say, come, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, and to the house of the power of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways. Why? Because they're not going to be under the new covenant, so they will have to learn the laws, and we will walk in his paths. For the law shall go forth of Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. So going back to Romans chapter 3 and 23, when it says, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God, those that's been held accountable for sin are the Israelites. Adam, his descendants down to us becoming a nation. When he sinned, that there was a trickle-down effect which fell upon all of us, and now Yahushua has made it possible for us to come back, to getting back to that state that we were in before. We're going to have those changed bodies, those immortal bodies, and we're going to have the laws within us, so we will not be dying, because the wages of sin is death. If you're not breaking the law, there will be no need for you to die, because you will not fall under that judgment. So that's just a little something I wanted to do, to give a quick understanding on for all have sinned, because religion have us believing that the all that has sinned. Actually, what I want to do, let me bring this out to show that these other nations ain't being held accountable for keeping the law. Because I'm going to go to Leviticus. Go to Deuteronomy 14. Show that these other nations ain't being held accountable. The Most High said it anyway in Amos, that he's going to punish the Israelites for all their iniquity. Now this is Amos, Deuteronomy chapter 14 and 21, and this is showing you that these other nations ain't being held accountable for keeping the law. Remember, sin is a transgression of the law. Deuteronomy 14:21, ye shall not eat of anything that die of itself. Thou shalt give it unto the stranger that is in thy gates, that he may eat it, but thou mayest sell it unto an alien, for thou art an holy people in the Lord thy power. So these other nations ain't being held accountable. We can't eat something that died of itself, but we can give it to these other nations so that they can eat, or sell it to them to make a change. Thus showing you that these other nations ain't being held accountable for keeping the law. Therefore, when it comes to sin, yes, they can do actions which would be deemed sin, but they're not actually being held accountable for keeping the law. So that all that have sinned, as we read in Daniel 9:11, is the Israelites. So with that, I'm going to close out. Give all praises to Yahweh, Bashem Yahushai, Harakah Kadash, Kwame Sha'Allah.